Welcome to the deep dive. We take the source material you've shared and, well, we cut straight to what really matters. Today we're going to look into a specific, maybe surprisingly dynamic market. The global forecast for ornithine aspartate for injection.
Yeah, we've got the data here, the projections from cognitive market research.
Exactly. And what we want to do today is, unpack these numbers a bit, understand the trends, see what they're telling us about different regions, and what's driving it all.
Right. It's about getting beyond just the raw figures. What's the story here? Where's it headed? Why? And what do those regional variations, really show us about wider health trends?
Spot on. And this isn't just some niche drug report. The forecast kind of gives us a window into bigger things happening. Yeah. Where's the growth really happening? What does that tell you? Let's dive in.
Okay.
First up, give us that big picture view, the global snapshot from the report. What were the starting numbers?
Okay, so according to the source material, the global market for this, ornithine aspartate for injection, it was sitting at $1,747.5 million back in 2021.
Right, okay, just shy of $1.75 billion then. And the forecast, where are they seeing this market going?
Well, the projection shows a pretty steady climb. It's expected to reach $2,124.1 million by 2025.
Okay.
And then keep going up, quite significantly actually, to hit $3,138.2 million by 2033.
Wow, so nearly doubling over, about 12 years? What's the average speed of that growth, globally speaking?
The overall global compound annual growth rate, the CAGR, that's projected at 5%.
Right, 5%. And just maybe remind us, for you listening, what does a 5% CAGR over that kind of period, what does it really mean for market growth?
It basically signifies a consistent, pretty solid upward path. It's not some quick spike. It's showing sustained expansion year on year. When you average it out, think of it like a reliable engine driving the whole market forward globally.
Got it. So, stable, predictable growth overall. Now that's the worldview. But the report then gets into the regions. Right, and that's where it gets interesting because not everywhere is moving at the same pace.
Exactly, and the differences are quite revealing. The report starts with the more, let's say, established markets, North America and Europe.
Okay, let's take North America first. What do the numbers look like there?
So North America, it's a big piece of this market, already quite developed. It was valued at $658.8 million in 2021, and it's forecast to grow to $11,148.3 million by 2033. Its overall CAGR is pegged at 4.8%.
4.8%. So a little bit below the global average. Suggests it's mature, like you said, but still expanding nicely. Who are the main players within North America in the data?
Well, the United States is definitely the dominant force just in terms of sheer size. It accounted for $506 million back in 2021.
Wow, yeah.
And expected to reach $846.7 million by 2033. That puts its CAGR at 4.5%.
Okay, so the U.S. is the biggest slice, but its growth rate, 4.5%, is actually a bit slower than the region's average and, well, definitely below the global 5%. Does the report hint at why the biggest market isn't growing the fastest there?
It doesn't spell out the why explicitly for the U.S. versus its neighbors, but, it's often the case with these really mature markets. The starting base is just so high.
Right.
So even a big jump in dollar terms doesn't translate to the same percentage growth as it would on a smaller base.
That makes sense, yeah. You need huge absolute growth on $500 million to get 5%. So what about Canada and Mexico then? How do they stack up?
Well, this is where you see a bit more momentum inside North America. Canada has a projected CAGR of 5.9%.
Oh, okay.
Growing from $90.3 million to $176.9 million. And Mexico is showing similar energy, 5.3% CAGR, going from $62.6 million up to $124.7 million over that same time frame.
Interesting. So the U.S. holds the lion's share now, but Canada and Mexico are actually growing their share faster. That's a key detail. An overall regional number, that 4.8% kind of hides. Okay, let's hop over across the Atlantic. Europe.
Europe actually mirrors North America's regional growth pretty closely. The market there is projected to go from $492.8 million in 2021 up to $851.7 million by 2033, and that's also a CAGR of 4.8%.
Right, another established area, steady growth. Any specific countries really pushing that growth in Europe?
Yeah, the UK actually stands out. It's got one of the higher growth rates within Europe, projected at 5.8% CAGR.
Wow, even faster than the global average.
Increasing from $97.2 million to $190.5 million. Germany also shows solid growth, 5.2% CAGR.
Okay, strong pace in the UK, Germany looking solid. What about other big European economies? France, Italy?
They show more moderate growth. France, Italy, Russia, Spain. Spain, they're generally hovering between 4% and 4.3%. Luxembourg is noted with a 5% CAGR, right on the global average. But the rest of Europe category, taken together, that shows a slower pace, 3.7% CAGR.
So Europe's a bit of a mixed picture then. UK and Germany strong, some others moderate, and then parts lagging behind a bit. Okay, that paints the picture for the established players. Now, let's shift focus. Where does the report say the growth is really, accelerating?
Right. Well, that brings us squarely to Asia Pacific. The source really highlights this region, rapid expansion here. The total revenues, they're projected to almost double, jumping from $405.4 million in 2021
Wow.
to a pretty substantial $812.5 million by 2033.
Nearly doubling in, just over a decade. That's significant. What's the engine? What's the overall CAGR for Asia Pacific?
It's a robust 5.8%.
5.8%.
Which is, noticeably higher than the global average and definitely higher than North America and Europe. According to this data, this is really where the future growth momentum seems strongest.
Okay, 5.8%, definitely an acceleration. Who's leading the charge within Asia Pacific? China, India.
Well, China is the largest market within the region, size-wise, and is showing strong growth, too. Projected 6% CAGR, expected to rise from $180 million back in 2021 to $370.9 million by 2033.
$370 million just from China is, huge. But I thought I saw the report call out India with an even faster growth rate. Did I catch that right?
You did, yeah. Good catch. India is showing the fastest growth, percentage-wise, among the major countries talked about. It has a projected CAGR of 6.8%.
6.8%.
Yeah. No, it's starting from a smaller base, $54.3 million in 2021, but it's forecast to reach $123.1 million by...
This audio was created with Podcastle.ai.
But it's forecast to reach $123.1 million by 2033.
Wow. Growing close to 7% a year is incredibly fast for this kind of market. Really highlights where some big shifts might be happening. Yeah. What about other parts of Asia Pacific? Japan, Korea?
They're definitely contributing significantly, too. Japan's growing at 5.2%, South Korea at 5.6%, Australia 5.4%, and Southeast Asia as a collective region shows a really impressive 6.2% CAGR.
Okay.
So yeah, while China and India are maybe the headlines, the acceleration in Asia Pacific seems pretty broad-based across the region.
That really paints a vivid picture. Asia Pacific as the sort of growth engine for this market going forward. Okay, what about Latin America?
Latin America is described as a market with steady, solid growth, mostly keeping pace with that global average. Brazil is the regional leader there, projected to go from $45.8 million to $81.6 million with a 5% CAGR.
Right on the global average. Are other countries in Latin America following that kind of pattern?
Pretty much, yeah. Argentina also shows a 5% CAGR. Colombia is actually slightly ahead, 5.2%. Peru and Chile have slightly more moderate growth rates, noted 4.2% and 4.5% respectively.
Okay, so Latin America expanding at a healthy clip, matching the global trend led by Brazil, Argentina, Colombia. Right, last region then. Middle East and Africa.
Yeah, this region presents, let's say, a more varied picture, according to the source.
Okay, how so? What do the numbers show?
We see sort of modest growth in places like Egypt, that's 3.7%, and Turkey at 3.8%. South Africa does a bit better at 4.5%, and Nigeria at 4.1%.
So mostly below that 5% global average then. Is there any part of this region where growth is, way slower?
Yes, and this is a key point the source makes. The category Rest of Middle East shows a notably slower growth rate. The CAGR there is just 2.1%.
Only 2.1%. Wow, that's a really stark contrast to, say, Asia Pacific. Does the report offer any reason, any explanation for that much slower pace?
It does, yeah. The source specifically links the slower growth in the Rest of Middle East category. It suggests it's an indication of a need for improvements, specifically in healthcare infrastructure and accessibility in those areas.
That's a powerful connection. The market data may be pointing directly towards underlying healthcare system issues. It gives a potential why for that specific regional lag. Okay, so we've covered the global numbers, the regional stories. The report also pulls together the broader factors, right? The things driving this growth everywhere. What were those key drivers identified?
The source highlights three main factors, and they're kind of interconnected. First, increasing awareness of hepatic conditions, liver conditions.
Okay, right. So people are just more aware of liver health issues. And just for context for you listening, ornithine aspartate is often used to manage certain liver problems or complications from them. So yeah, more awareness would naturally lead to more diagnosis and treatment. Makes sense. What's number two?
Second driver is greater healthcare spending worldwide. Pretty straightforward. As countries put more money into health, access to treatments tends to improve.
Absolutely. More spending could mean more clinics, better training, resources to actually buy medications like this one. And the third driver.
And third, improved diagnostic capabilities globally. So better tools, better techniques mean these hepatic conditions can be spotted earlier and, more accurately.
Yeah, that ties it all together nicely. Awareness gets people seeking help, better diagnostics find the conditions, and more healthcare spending provides the means for treatment, like this injection, to actually be prescribed and used.
Exactly. And you can sort of see how these drivers play out differently across the regions we just talked about.
How so?
Well, in places like North America and Europe, awareness and diagnostics are relatively mature. Healthcare spending is generally high, which leads to that steady but maybe less explosive growth we saw.
Right. They're already benefiting quite a bit from those factors.
Yeah.
But in regions like Asia-Pacific and parts of Latin America, where we saw that faster growth.
Precisely. That rapid expansion suggests that those very factors, awareness spending, diagnostics, might be improving more quickly, perhaps from a lower starting point. As more people become aware, more diagnoses happen, more budget becomes available, the market for relevant treatment just grows faster.
It really provides that crucial why behind the different regional growth rates. It's not just random numbers. It's directly linked to these fundamental shifts in global health and, well, economics too.
Yeah, it connects the market forecast directly to, tangible changes in public health and how healthcare systems are developing.
This has been really insightful, actually, pulling apart the numbers and seeing the forces behind them. So if we were to boil it down, what's the main takeaway from this forecast on the ornithine aspartate for injection market?
I think the key insight is this. It's a market on a strong global upward path, right? Driven by that rising awareness of liver conditions, more healthcare spending, better diagnostics. But, and this is crucial, that growth isn't happening evenly everywhere.
Right.
Established markets are stable, growing steadily, but the real acceleration, the momentum, is in emerging economies, particularly across Asia-Pacific, also parts of Latin America, where those underlying drivers seem to be expanding faster. And the data also flags areas like parts of the Middle East, where those drivers might be lagging.
So it tells a story of a market expanding kind of in step with global health improvements, but it also really highlights the unevenness of that progress around the world.
That sums it up well. The numbers reflect both, opportunity and also areas where healthcare access and infrastructure probably need more focus.
Okay, so building on everything we've discussed from this source, here's something for you to think about. Given that this specific drug market's growth is so clearly tied to things like awareness of liver disease, healthcare access, better diagnostics, what might this forecast imply, maybe more broadly, about the global health landscape itself? What health challenges might be becoming more prominent or maybe just better managed? And crucially, where are the areas globally where basic healthcare infrastructure might still be a really significant roadblock, something to mull over beyond just the numbers we talked about today?
Okay, let's unpack this. Today, we're diving deep into a very specific but actually quite dynamic area of pharma. That's the market for ornithine aspartate for injection. We've got this market analysis report, the one you sent over, actually. It digs into the key dynamics, the outlook, basically the future for this treatment. So our mission here, cut through the noise, pull out the key insights for you. Think of it as, your shortcut to understanding what's really going on in this market. And just quickly, ornithine aspartate, OAA, well, it's important because it helps lower high blood ammonia levels. That's a major issue in liver problems, especially something serious called hepatic encephalopathy. So stick with us. We'll look at why this market's growing, the challenges it faces, and they're definitely challenges, and then peek at what might be next, all based on this report.
Yeah, and what really jumps out first, I think, is how this market's momentum is just fundamentally tied to a major global health issue. The analysis makes it super clear. The main engine here is the rising prevalence of liver disorders worldwide. Things like hepatic encephalopathy, yes, but also, fatty liver disease, cirrhosis. It's a growing list.
Yeah.
And the report connects this surge directly to factors we hear about a lot: alcohol abuse, hepatitis, but also obesity, sedentary lifestyles. It's all linked.
And that's OA's sweet spot, right? It's its role.
Exactly.
It tackles those high ammonia levels, which is crucial for brain function in HE patients. So the report shows basically as these liver conditions go up, the demand for effective treatments like OA injection just follows suit. It's almost a one one-to-one correlation.
It really is. And building on that, the report also flags a key clinical reason for growth. It's the preference, in certain situations, for the injectable form over, say, oral tablets.
Okay. Why is that?
Speed, mostly, and better bioavailability. The injectable just works faster and more reliably gets into the system. This isn't trivial. It's absolutely vital in critical care.
Right, so you mean like emergencies, or when someone's already quite ill in the hospital.
Precisely. You've got critically ill patients, maybe their gut isn't absorbing things properly. Getting that ammonia down quickly is the priority. The injection bypasses potential absorption issues.
Makes sense.
So the analysis shows it's really favored in hospitals, ICUs, tertiary care settings, places needing immediate, reliable detoxification. That specific need definitely fuels demand for the injection.
Okay, speed and reliability in serious cases. Got it.
Yeah.
What else is pushing things forward?
Another big one the report points to is better awareness and earlier diagnosis of hepatic encephalopathy.
So we're catching it sooner.
Exactly. Better imaging, better lab tests, even things like public health campaigns about liver wellness. It all adds up. Healthcare providers are...
This audio was created with podcastle.ai.
Campaigns about liver wellness. It all adds up. Healthcare providers are just getting, well, better and faster at spotting HE and related metabolic problems.
And the result is, earlier detection.
Right.
And since OA injection is often used to manage ammonia levels right from those earlier stages...
It means it gets used more often and sooner in the disease process.
You got it. It reinforces its place in those early liver therapy protocols. More cases found, earlier intervention.
Interesting. So it's not just more liver problems driving it, but also finding them earlier. Okay, we've covered the growth drivers. Now, here's where it gets really interesting, maybe a bit trickier. What about the headwinds, the challenges?
Yeah, the report doesn't shy away from those. Despite the growth, there are significant hurdles. First and foremost, probably the biggest barrier mentioned is the cost. The high cost of the injectable treatment. And the report stresses this is a major obstacle, particularly in low and middle income countries, where healthcare coverage might be patchy or patients pay out of pocket. That price tag can just be too high.
And that links to access too, doesn't it? The report mentioned limited availability in, say, rural clinics. Spot on. If it's not stocked or the facility isn't equipped, that restricts access, especially for people who might not be able to travel easily or afford care at a larger center. It hits disadvantaged populations harder.
Okay, cost and access. What else?
There's also mention of potential side effects. Now, they're noted as relatively uncommon.
Like what?
Things like gastrointestinal upset, maybe some rare allergic reactions, potential kidney issues, minor for most, usually. But, the possibility can sometimes make clinicians hesitate, especially if they feel a less expensive oral option might work for a milder case.
Right. Risk versus benefit, cost versus benefit. And then there's the regulatory side. Injectables are always more complex, aren't they?
Oh, absolutely. That's a huge point in the analysis. The regulatory framework for injectables is really stringent. We're talking strict controls on sterility, storage, packaging, ongoing safety monitoring, pharmacovigilance. The report highlights how this piles on production costs and complexity for the manufacturers.
Which means?
Well, it can delay new products getting to market. It can limit overall availability, especially in regions where navigating those regulatory hoops is tough.
Okay.
And another point made is that these regulatory burdens might actually put off smaller or medium-sized pharma companies from even trying to enter this market.
So less competition.
Potentially, yes, which could slow down innovation or maybe keep prices higher than they might otherwise be. It limits the players.
So high cost, access issues, potential side effects, and a really tough regulatory environment. Those are definitely significant hurdles. But, okay, looking ahead, what does the analysis say about the future? What are the positive trends emerging?
Right. It's not all challenges. The report definitely points to several emerging trends that could keep things moving forward. One big one is how OA is being used more in combination therapies.
Not just on its own.
Exactly. Clinicians are getting smarter about it, strategically combining it with drugs like rifaximin, lactulose, even probiotics. They're aiming for better overall outcomes.
And the report suggests this is really catching on in specialist centers, right? Places dealing with complex liver cases.
Precisely. It shows OA becoming a sort of cornerstone in more comprehensive treatment plans. Another major trend is geographical. The report highlights real growth in adoption in developing healthcare markets. Asia-Pacific, Latin America are mentioned specifically.
And what's driving that?
Well, it's things like improving medical infrastructure in those regions, plus more awareness spreading about liver health generally. The groundwork is being laid. And related to that, there's growing institutional support. Governments, health authorities are actually starting to include OA injection in their official national treatment guidelines.
That's huge, surely. Official backing.
Oh, it's massive. It provides real validation, encourages wider use within the established healthcare system.
Makes perfect sense. And the last trend, the one I found really fascinating, the research into totally new uses.
Yeah.
Beyond just liver disease.
Yes, this is potentially game-changing for the future, according to the report. Researchers are actively looking at OA for things like hepatic steatosis, fatty liver disease itself, not just its complications. Also, certain rare genetic issues, urea cycle disorders where the body can't process ammonia properly, and even potentially other neurological conditions that seem to have a link to ammonia levels.
Wow.
Think about what that could mean if even some of these research lines pan out.
It massively expands where OA could be used.
Exactly. It expands its therapeutic utility enormously. That means helping more types of patients, obviously, but also opening up completely new revenue streams. It could shift OA from being mainly about managing liver complications to having roles in genetics, maybe wider neurology.
A much broader application than its current primary use.
Potentially, yes. The underlying science ammonia detoxification might be relevant much more widely.
Okay. So let's try and bring it all together then.
Yeah.
Based on this analysis, the market for ornithine aspartate for injection looks, well, pretty set for more growth, even with those hurdles we talked about.
That's really the core takeaway from the report, yes. The drivers are strong. You've got rising liver disease rates globally, that's undeniable. You've got the clear clinical need for the injectable in serious cases. And you have growing access and awareness, especially in emerging markets. Those are powerful forces.
But the constraints are real.
Oh, yes. Cost, regulatory complexity, they aren't going away overnight. They definitely shape how and where the market grows, especially in places with fewer resources.
Right.
But overall, yeah, the analysis paints a positive picture looking forward. You've got evolving treatment approaches using OA more strategically. You have that growing institutional support. And critically, you have this pipeline of research into brand new uses. That combination really sets the stage for broader use now and potentially significant long-term expansion down the road.
That was a really insightful deep dive into the ornithine aspartate injection market, all thanks to the report you shared. Thanks for walking us through it.
Absolutely, and maybe something for you to think about listening in. Considering that research, especially into urea cycle disorders, other neurological conditions linked to ammonia, what does that suggest about just how tightly connected our liver health is to our broader metabolic state, even our brain function?
Mm-hmm.
And thinking ahead, how might future treatments need to bridge these areas, liver, metabolism, neurology perhaps, in ways we haven't fully explored yet?
Definitely something to ponder. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
This audio was created with Podcastle.ai